All right, welcome everyone to today's Title Topics webinar. These are Alta's free presentations that we offer every month on issues important to title professionals. I'm Jeremy Yohe, Alta's Vice President of Communications, and today we've got a great program lined up to help you learn how to recruit and staff your companies to meet your evolving customer needs. It's a beautiful sunny day here. Hopefully it's a fantastic day wherever you're at. Before starting, I just need to touch on a few housekeeping items and acquaint you with what you see on the screen. So what you should see now is the GoToWebinar viewer. This slide provides an example of what you'll be seeing. You should see on the right the GoToWebinar control panel, and this is where you can ask questions or you can select your audio mode. So if your audio is choppy, if you're listening through your computer, you may have a weak internet connection and you may want to select the telephone option. If you're the attendee control panel will collapse automatically when it's not in use. If you want to keep it open, you can click on the view menu and uncheck the auto hide control panel. And you can also download a copy of today's presentation from that viewing panel. I also emailed a copy of the presentation about an hour ago. If you are listening only on the phone, you can shoot me an email and I'll send you the material after the webinar. And my email is jyohe@alta.org. And all participant lines are muted for today's presentation. If, as I mentioned, anytime you have a question, just use the chat box function. We'll hold a little bit of time at the end of the webinar. And as an added benefit, we are recording today's presentation. Once it's edited, it will be available on Alta's website at alta.org/title topics. That's alta.org/title topics. And I need to thank Fidelity for sponsoring our webinars this year. Their support allows us to continue providing these educational opportunities free of charge. Now, with the housekeeping out of the way, let me introduce today's speakers. First, we have Dr. Cynthia McGovern, the First Lady of Sales. Cynthia is CEO of Orange Leaf Consulting, which focuses on helping companies create a plan, grow revenue, and develop staff. Also joining us today is ALTA President Dan Mennenoh. Dan is president of Galena, Illinois-based HB Wilkinson Title, which originally opened its doors in 1883, and I'm guessing probably has a little bit different staff makeup these days. Thank you both for participating today. Before we get into the content, we did want to ask a few questions of the attendees. So we'll launch this first question, and we just want to know kind of the average age of your staff. So if everyone could take answer the question real quick. Nate sent me a comment. He says the average age of his staff is old. All right, we're going to go ahead and give you a few more seconds to get your vote in. Got about 80% of you. All right, we're going to go ahead and close it, and we'll get to the next question, or let's share it real quick, and everyone can kind of see and know here what we got going on here. All right. Although I'm not being able to view it on my end. Dan or Cynthia, if you can see it, you could talk about it. If not, we'll share the results after. We'll hide. Now we'll go ahead and move on to the next question. Where do you find most of your new hires? Your competitors, online job postings, referrals, social media, colleges? Any of those options match up with where you're getting your staff these days? All right, about half of you have voted. 40, almost half are getting people through referrals. 36% through online job postings, and almost 20% from competitors. All right, we got most of everyone here. We'll close that one. All right, fourth question here. In what area does your company struggle trying to fill positions? Closers. Closers seem to be taking the early lead. We've got title examiners coming on strong on the outside, and sales staff at third. All right, so closers, title examiners, and sales. Kathy just sent me a message. She says all of them, same as Nancy Hughes. Hopefully we'll help you guys get some tips today. All right, last question, and then we'll get to the content. What's more important for your company? Serving existing customers or gaining new customers? Got about 40% of you in. It's 50-50. A few people have messaged me. Should have gave the options of both, but you got to make a decision here. All right, got over 80%. It's 50-50. So, all right.
Wow.
Hopefully that gives the speakers here a little color on who we've got here. With that, I'll step to the side, and Cynthia, I'll let you let everyone know what we're going to talk about and get into the content.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for having us on today. Dan and I speak for both of us, we're so excited to be talking about this topic because it is something that is so powerful. Right now, it's super, super current for just about every one of our clients that we work with, and Dan's team has done an amazing job of hiring new staff and really being able to build that culture. So today we're going to talk first about evolving the customer that we have. I mean, who is our current customer and who are they about to be? And you guys have already seen some of this in your markets. And then the second one is building your bench team. You know, a lot of times we do the hurry hire and, oh my gosh, we got to get somebody in right away. But there is a process to building a bench team that you can pull from to help you to hire and recruit. And then we're going to get into the ins and outs of actually hiring. So we're going to talk about assessing your team, who's there currently, what you need, what areas you need to focus on based on your strategy, then building the job profile, and then finally casting your net to actually bring in those candidates. So Jeremy, if you want to hit that next slide, let's talk first about the evolving customer. So many of you have probably already had millennial customers come in, and if they're anything like the customers that are coming into our title agent clients, they're telling you how to do your job. So they've already done their homework on who we are and what we do. They actually know what title insurance is, and they're very tech savvy, and they actually have greater expectations of what they want from their title company because they do know the process a little bit more. They are a little bit more educated. So because the customer is changing, we also need to be changing the way that we not only staff our title agencies, but the way we run them too, and how we're reaching out to the customer. Alta's done a lot of work on the home buyer outreach program. There's a lot of resources for you, that you can literally get for free as an Alta member to reach out to those folks. But really, it's also looking at the fact that our customer is changing, our business has changed. I mean, my gosh, the folks that are on the phone today, anybody that's been here in the last 10 years, it's a completely different model. So the one thing that hasn't changed, though, is the way that we recruit. So Jeremy, hit that next slide for me. Everything else has changed, but we're still recruiting the way that we always have. And, based on the poll that we just did, we're still recruiting from competitors. We're still recruiting from, inside of our industry. But the thing to consider is, the pool is shallow right now, and it's an aging industry. And so we're going to have to start pulling from outside. We're going to have to start looking at people who don't know title insurance, who don't know who we are. And I know that's a little bit scary for some folks on the phone because we feel like we have to pull people from internal. But remember, we all came into the industry not knowing how to spell title insurance either, so we can teach them that. But we do have to kind of reach out to them, let them know this is an awesome industry, this is an awesome job prospect for them, and they can have a really great career here. So thinking about things that you're doing as a recruiting and retention strategy already. We throw money at our employees to keep them. But are we still going to be doing that 20 years from now? Turnover is expensive. It is very costly, both from a managerial perspective as well as a monetary perspective. And what I would invite you to do is really take time to think about it and make a smart decision about how you're recruiting. When we assess organizations, we always find, and I can't tell you, there's not one that we haven't assessed in the last 3 years where we haven't said, you need to build a bench team. You need to have a recruiting strategy. And so often it's a reactive versus a proactive approach. So Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about how you can be more proactive and build that bench team so when you do need to pull in a new player, you got somebody there.
Great. Thank you, Cynthia. I appreciate it. And just to start, I would say that the responses to the questions, I fall into pretty much where everybody else, the bulk of the group was, so I can certainly relate. We've taken a completely different approach to how we look for people, how we bring people on, and how we deal with all of our folks on staff. And being a baseball fan, we kind of look at it as building our farm system. We've certainly had occasions where we brought people on who had experience to one degree or another, but honestly, our success rate with that has been pretty low, so we've taken a different approach. We certainly did realize that our workforce in our company certainly is aging. I'm part of that group, and we need to make sure that we're bringing young people on board. Cynthia mentioned that there are glamorous industries out there that attract people, and title insurance doesn't necessarily have a reputation of being glamorous, but honestly, it's a wonderful profession, and the process of finding folks and explaining to them why it's such a great industry and how you can help folks, and it's a very rewarding career. We've had success with that. And I'll turn it back to you, Cynthia, for the next one.
Perfect. Hey, Jeremy, if you want to hit that next slide too. Because we need to build a bench team, we've got to start looking at where those folks are coming from. And like I mentioned before, we've got to start looking at millennials. And I know some of you are going, oh my gosh, millennials, we have millennial children or family members, you're going, I can't even imagine. But they're actually really fantastic employees, and they can be. Yes, they're different than maybe those of us that are on the phone right now. Yes, maybe their work-life balance is different. Maybe their work strategy is different. But you've got to look at the facts. By 2020, 50% of the workforce is going to be millennials. So that presents an interesting opportunity. And then notice I didn't say challenge, I said opportunity, because I think we have an opportunity to attract them to the title industry. But we have existed in secret for so long. And again, we're doing a lot of outreach with regard to letting people know who we are, letting people know that we protect their property rights, letting them know all the things that we do. Same thing with these millennials. They've got to start understanding there is a great industry here that would welcome them and welcome their skill set to come in and help us to continue to build this industry. Next slide, please. Millennial factoids are the next piece I want to talk about, that you've got to think about who these folks are to be able to bring them in. So the first thing is education. They want ongoing education. So these are not going to be the employees that come in and go to work and do the same thing and press the same button for the next 20 years. That's not them. They want to further their education. Now that could be professional development seminars, that could be sending them to leadership seminars, that could be getting them through a master's program, who knows? But they're going to want that. They're looking for that education and continual growth. 3 out of 4 of them also worry about life balance, quite frankly. And, our industry has ups and downs. We have busy seasons. We have, somewhat slower seasons, although we didn't really have one this year. And think about how you can help them to achieve that work-life balance, because that is going to be something they look for in a job. And like Dan had said too, we're competing against some pretty sexy industries and some pretty sexy companies that are, giving them a month off and giving them sabbaticals. How do we as an industry start shifting to be able to attract this kind of talent to the title industry, but also help them create that balance? And then the top 3 concerns, if you look at any of the data on millennials, is they want financial security, they want job stability, but they also want career satisfaction. So it's really looking at all the different things that you can do to help them achieve those 3 things and show them that this is truly a career for them. And a lot of our clients that have millennial employees already, it's really amazing because they'll raise their hand, at least the ones that I've seen. They're going to say, hey, I want to learn this, or I want to try this, which is really great because then you can help and create a professional development plan with them, kind of get them in the move. But the key is to know what you're dealing with as you start to attract these folks. And so if we know we're going after millennials, we know that they're going to be a different breed. We know that they want a work-life balance. They also probably want flex jobs too, if we're being honest. Then we start thinking about, okay, how do we go after them? But first things first, you got to assess your own team. So if you hit that next slide, we've all talked about, oh, go ahead.
Real quick, sorry to interrupt. Actually had a question come in. A listener wanted to know if we could actually define what a millennial is, the age. And then Mandy also sent in a comment. There are millennials on the call, so fantastic. Thank you for being involved and learning about the staffing and recruiting and the future of the industry. So could someone, Cynthia, define the millennial age range?
Depends on what resource you look at, but it's typically under 34 was my understanding as of late. You can see it up to 36 years of age right now, but that's my understanding is somewhere in that bracket. Dan, do you have a better statistic on that?
Not really, no. It's, you know, in my perspective on it too is that there's always a bit of a carryover, if you will, in terms of attributes and between one generation to the next. So there's, in my view, there's a window there of several years that, you know, you can have someone who technically may not be a millennial, but they have a lot of the attributes of millennials. So, you know, you just kind of have to look at it that way.
Yeah, I think it's two decades, like 1880 to 2000, anyone born in that time frame. But the top three concerns that are on the slide, I'm not a millennial, but I like those top three concerns as well.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's knowing that market too, because your millennial market may be very different if you're in a metro area versus a rural area. So it's also knowing what the expectation is culturally where you live. So looking at that. But what I would invite you to think about is if you do want to attract millennials, we just have to know what we're up against. We have to know what we're competing against for the job market. So now that you know a little bit more about millennials, let's talk about your own team and figuring out what you need. And the first thing that we always recommend, and I know Dan's done this extensively with his team, is to assess who you've currently got. Look at what you got, and we talk about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, but really looking at it in terms of your staff. You know, what are your biggest strengths? If you have people that are fantastic with regard to communication with clients, that's awesome. But a weakness might be that your team is not great at technology, not technology forward, not social media savvy. Okay, that's a weakness. Opportunities could also be that technology piece. Threats. What is the other job market in your area? You know, are people poaching your folks? I mean, there's a lot of things that you can consider. And one of the things that I would recommend everybody do when you hang up this phone, and I know those of you that know me know I love some homework, but I really would invite you to assess your team. Sit down and really just look at who you got, because you'll also start seeing the forecast of your talent and where they're going to be. You know, if you've got people that are going to be retiring in the next 5 years, you need to start that succession planning now for that role. You need to start thinking about who's going to be stepping in there, especially in leadership. So when you do your assessment of your own team, you know, look at the performances, look at where they've been. Are you missing some critical expertise on your team? Is there something that you need that you don't have, especially given where you're going as an organization and who your customer is going to be. And Dan, I know you guys do an amazing job of this within your own organization. You want to talk about your IDPs for a second?
Sure. The way we evolved this process, as some of you may know, my daughter Devin works for the company, and we refer to her as our Chief People Officer. But essentially, we went through a process of actually doing individual interviews. Devin did these individual interviews of everybody on staff to see. We needed to figure out where everybody was, where our strengths and weaknesses are, what their goals were, all those types of things. And she went through a process, and she wanted everybody to be completely open with her. So it was made very clear that the direct quotes, if there was something negative, that was not coming directly back to me. Devin sort of synthesized it and brought things to me. But then the next step in the process was to develop our individual development plan. And we actually have a specific individual plan for every employee in the company. And we go through a process of, there's an annual review, there are goals set, there's a half-year update to make sure things are going well, and what it does for us is it lets all of our team members know that we care about their development, we care about their careers with our company, but it also then holds us accountable. If we have training issues to do, it holds us accountable, so we have to produce as well. And that, again, has helped tremendously with all of our folks. And it's been a great system. We do have our IDP form that's available that can be downloaded. Anybody who wants it, we have no pride of authorship. You're welcome to use it and ask questions if you want. I'm always happy to answer those questions.
Awesome. One more comment on that too. I have to commend you, Dan, that you guys did that assessment internally and you did it in a confidential way. We do that with a lot of our clients, but it's letting them have an opportunity to talk to somebody that's not their boss to say what they want to learn. Because the other thing is, that's a retention technique. And one of the best ways to build your staff is to retain your staff, build an amazing team that people want to be a part of. You become the flower instead of the bee, right? So you want people to want to come in. By having individual development plans for all of your folks, people take notice in your market. People really start to pay attention to that. So I think that's a huge opportunity for everybody on the call. That's really, really awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
well, it also gave us it also gave us the opportunity to identify people who could fill into positions going forward, and it gave us the ability to design their mentoring and their training to get them into that position down the road.
It's awesome. I mean, and that's another piece, like you just mentioned the mentoring piece. If you do have senior staff, how are you using them as a mentor to develop that next generation? I mean, there's so much industry knowledge that will go away when these folks retire if we're not careful. So I think there's an opportunity there as well where you're assessing your team, you're seeing what talents lie there. That's a great opportunity for a retention technique for someone who's a senior escrow officer or something like that maybe wants to start helping someone else or wants to start teaching that next generation. There's really great opportunities there. But it's reminding everybody on the call today, your team is purposely built. You don't just put people in. And I feel like sometimes in our industry, you know, we lose a processor, so we plug in a processor. I invite you to stop before you do that and really assess your team and say, okay, I need a processor. That's one skill set, but what other skill set does that individual need to have to round out this team? And when we do this assessment in organizations, we'll find, you know, you may have a lot of pitchers, but you don't have any catchers or you don't have any first basemen. You got to figure that out and figure out what the team is that you need to build and be purposeful in that. So, Dan, you want to talk about building that job profile?
Sure. This was another step that we took that we found very beneficial, and that is that we went to great lengths to prepare very detailed job descriptions of every function, every duty in the company, and we defined them very clearly. And when we talk to a potential candidate, we give them a very clear picture of what our expectations are, and literally down to the point where, you know, I hate to refer to it as an entry-level job anymore, but our admin assistant role, one of the job listings on there is answering the phone. I mean, sometimes you have to get as detailed to touch on everything that's expected of them and lay it out very clearly so that there's a clear understanding that folks have. And then we build on that as we go. We have multiple levels of examiners. We have multiple levels of closers. We do construction payouts in our state, so we have a couple of levels of that. So we have these different roles, and we've gone to great lengths to define all these things very clearly and very thoroughly, and we have found it to be extremely helpful. And because everybody knows, as soon as, you know, when they first walk in the door, when they first apply for a job with us, they know exactly what's going to be expected of them, and they also see what the opportunity is for them in the future as they grow with the company, because we share all the job descriptions with them, and it's worked very, very well.
I think that's huge, Dan, and that's another retention technique. You know, people want to know what's expected of them, especially the millennials. They want to have good job satisfaction, and they want to feel like they're making a difference. Without clear parameters, it's hard to do that. And the good news is, you guys, there's a beautiful gift from the Alta folks that is available to you. They have gotten together, the education committee, and put together a bunch of job descriptions, and it's actually available to you on the Alta website. And you see the link right there. It's alta.org/human-resources. There's stuff in there, but there are job descriptions for just about all of the main jobs within a title agency. So we may have missed one or something there, but then the titles may be different. You know, you may not call a person an escrow officer. They may be a processor or something of that nature. But dig through those, because I think you'll be surprised. That is an amazing jumping off point. And I'm grateful to the Alta and the education team and everybody for putting this together, because that's one of the first things we've ended up doing is just writing job descriptions for people when they go in there. So you build the job profile. That's a recruiting technique. This is also a recruiting technique. But remember, this is also a retention technique as well. So things to think about. And I believe, Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, you can download a sample job description and a sample advertisement on the platform today. Is that right?
That's correct. From the handout section, we've got the sample job description, the ad, and that's also where you can get the individual development plan that Dan mentioned, as well as a copy of the presentation.
Awesome, awesome. And then, you know, the common employability skills, that's also in there as well. I will preview one little thing that's coming. I'm a member of the education committee as well. We're actually working on a hiring guide too. So to be seen at a later date, maybe 2018, but it is something we're working on to help the industry to continue to be able to hire and hire strong, you know, hire really amazing talent. So that's something that is, stay tuned, and it will be coming as well.
Real quick before we transition to the next slide, I had a question for Dan, and kind of on this topic right now. And Dan, could you share at what point in the hiring process do you share all the job descriptions, and how do you share them?
Sure. We go through a process. Certainly the interview process has become far more detailed, and so that we can discern what kind of folks are there. But usually once we have somebody who's gone through the first phase or the first interview, we then have certainly the local office manager or whoever the department that this individual is being hired for get involved and do another interview. We often do 2 or 3 interviews with people. But once we've in that interview process, when it looks promising, then we will share that with them, because you know we're perfectly happy to share this stuff. And honestly, in some cases, I'm pretty sure Devin provides describes. We don't necessarily give them a paper copy of it, but she'll go through the job description that we're hiring for with them at the first interview, and then as it progresses, if they are going to if they're a good candidate and it looks like they're a very positive candidate, then we'll provide them more and more as we go.
Okay, good, interesting. And actually, while you're talking, I had a couple of people ask about salary ranges and whether or not do you share that as well, so people know what they are working toward?
Excuse me. Yes, we'll certainly, obviously for the position that we're hiring, we're very clear about what the wage or salary is going to be to begin with. We give them certainly an idea of where it goes, and you know, obviously these things change as time goes by, so we don't nail down, if you will, firm salaries for things. But you know, we do indicate that each of the job descriptions, as somebody goes up the ladder, that yes, the more they know, the more valuable they are to us. So they will be compensated at a higher level as we go. And so we don't go through a process of sharing high-level examiner salaries with somebody who's coming into the business without any experience, but we certainly give them a good indication as to where they can go within the position. But then as they move up to other positions, you know, we give them some idea of where that will begin, and year after year it changes for us. So we don't want to, if you will, come up with a firm number that really isn't going to be, that'll change in a year or two. So
Okay.
But we're very clear about where they're starting.
Okay, good. All right, Cynthia, I'll turn it back over to you there.
Yeah, this is a great conversation, and thank you guys for the questions. Keep them coming. I think this is really, really great conversation and really great dialogue. So going back to the recruiting piece, this is about recruiting millennials, but it is recruiting as basics as well. So, the first thing is you've assessed your team, and now you've built that job profile because you need someone who is a selling escrow officer, or you need someone who is a receptionist who can do order entry. Whatever it happens to be, what that job profile is. Now you've got to cast your net, and you've got to really start looking for where you're going to find that talent and where you find those folks. So Dan and his team have done a really good job of this. Can you talk a little bit about where you found some of this amazing talent as of late?
Sure. We've been honestly very successful over the past few years, and just as many people on the question survey, the best luck we've had has been through referrals. We have certainly posted on various job sites and that sort of thing, but the best luck we've had is literally through referrals. And we've been able to hire over the past couple of years. I think we've hired 8 or 9 millennials onto our team, and we've been very successful. We have truly some rising stars with these folks, and they're just, they're wonderful folks to work with. And one of the things that we've done, honestly, it sounds kind of silly, but we've eliminated the word staff and the word employee from our vocabulary. We refer to team and team members because millennials want to be a part of something bigger and a part of something that's doing something very positive for others. And obviously, the title industry does that. We protect property rights, and we're helping people buy homes. So that has been a very positive thing that we've seen. But we've had great luck bringing on some wonderful young people who we have now identified as future leaders in our company, and we're also beginning to get them involved within our state trade association, as well as going to Alta functions. So giving them those opportunities has been very positive.
That's awesome. One of the things, Dan, you and I were talking about when we were preparing this WebEx is all of the things that you guys have done to really even build that team culture. And you want to talk about that for a second, Jeremy? I think you have a slide on this too.
Yeah, the next slide is a good one. Yeah, we've obviously you want to try to build up a rapport and a culture within your company. So we have a number of things that we do. One of them is at holiday time, we have an ugly sweater contest, and it's been going on now for 3 or 4 years. And it is interesting because it's become very competitive, and we get some truly ugly sweaters. And this past Christmas season, we actually added to it office decorations, and I want to tell you, we saw some really interesting decorations. I mean, it was all very nice, but just, and everybody became very competitive. And the way we determine who the winners are is there are photographs. Devin and my wife Mary go around. They are the elves that go around and take photographs of everybody in every office, and it's all posted, and everybody votes on it. And we even have a traveling trophy that goes to the winner, and they get their name and year put on it. So it's pretty funny. But then there are other things that we do as well that are very simple. Whenever anybody has a birthday, they get a bouquet of birthday balloons, and it kind of brightens up the office, brightens up their day. So there are a lot of simple things like that we do that really help build a good team spirit. We just last week had an all-company meeting where we bring everybody together. We feed them, we talk about what's going on, and we get our team involved in actually presenting certain topics that we want to go over with everybody. And it does build that level of collaboration, and obviously things like the ugly sweater contest also brings in a competitive nature that folks like to have and enjoy, and it's everybody has a great time with it. So it's fun stuff to do.
And I want to thank Jeremy for not putting our heads on those sweaters. So thank you for that. I love the fact that you guys are building that culture, and I think that's something that is really important that we have to consider when attracting millennials too, is we are competing against, the Zappos of the world, and they have superhero day, and they have pajama day, and so we really have to think about what kind of culture you're building, and, I talk about this all the time with our clients, but you have a culture whether it's on purpose or not. Make sure it's on purpose. And your team has a lot to do with that culture, because if you're just hiring the same person over and over again and you're not adding that diversity, you're not adding those different personalities, you're not adding those different skill sets, it does affect the culture too. So I love the fact that you guys are building in these fun things. And again, that is not only a retention technique, but it is also a recruiting technique, because like Dan said, his last, 8 hires were through referrals. It's because people talk about how much fun it is to work there, and they talk about what a great time they have and these ugly sweater days, and people go, wait a second, we don't get that at my job. I want to go work there. So that's a huge opportunity for all of us as an industry. Yes, we do serious work, and it doesn't change the fact that we have a very important job, but we can have fun at work too. And I would encourage you guys to be thinking about those kinds of things as you're building out your culture and building out your team. So once we have cast our net, yes, you can look through referrals, you can post jobs on Indeed, on LinkedIn, but you'll find that, a lot of it still comes through referral and word of mouth, especially for our industry. I love to hear people's stories where they say, oh, I knew somebody who knew somebody, and here I am. But once you get that candidate in, you've got to conduct the interview. And what we find with a lot of our clients is the interviews are fairly basic, and you hire a lot of times on personality versus true skill set. So what Dan and I wanted to share with you today is make sure you have a consistent list of questions and a good scoring system, so that you are taking that personality out of play to a degree. Yes, that does matter. Yes, you want someone that has drive, that is customer focused, but you want to be objective. And just having that personal connection isn't enough. They need to get the job and do the job, and you want to make sure they're qualified for that. So taking that job description and then breaking that down into job functions and job expectations is a good place to start to create your list of questions. And we think about the things that they'll be doing day to day. So if they're going to be answering the phone, do a phone interview. Make sure they've got a good phone voice, and make sure that's part of it. If they're going to be client facing, make sure you face to face. And again, if you're hiring people from outside of your region, there's lots of technology. We do a lot of Skype and FaceTime interviews on behalf of our clients, so there's lots of things that you can do to use technology. But again, I would encourage you to think about that job profile, think about what they're going to be doing, and then interview them in that space. And always follow up with an in-person meeting. I always think the last interview should always be in person. But again, it depends on your job function. And then behavioral interviewing techniques are really powerful. And I want to talk about that for just a quick second. We have helped our clients over the years to develop kind of their scorecard and the behavioral interviewing questions. And it's because it's based on past behavior, it helps you to really see how they handled the situation. So for example, one of the basic interview questions we all ask is, tell me about your greatest strength. Now tell me about your greatest weakness. Okay, well, if this person's a good salesperson and they interview well, they're going to take their weakness and turn it into a strength. So you're not actually getting good information from that. But if you asked it in a behavioral interviewing way, you would say, tell me a time that one of your biggest strengths helped you to retain a client. Then they have to think about telling you a story, and then it becomes something that you can hold on to and see how they handled that situation. Flip side is the weakness question. Tell me about a time that one of your weaknesses got in your way and cost you your better judgment. Then they have to tell you a story. So there's lots of ways that you can do this, and what I'd encourage you to do is have the folks that are in the role today help you develop those lists of questions. Yes, there's a skill set. If they're processing, yes, you need to take them through a mock file, all of those things. But you can create sort of the job profile questions as well to help you interview them, and then create that scorecard. This is really, really important if you are hiring salespeople. When we did the surveys in the beginning, half of you said it was retaining clients, half of you said it was growth. Well, guess what? Those are both sales skills. So how are you assessing the sales skills of your potential staff member or your team member? And even though they're going to be a processor, they're going to be a title examiner, they're going to be an underwriter, guess what? If they're client-facing, they're in sales. So make sure those are built in as well. A lot of times we call that service in our industry, but it really is sales. It's about retaining those clients, making them happy, making their day, and making them want to come back. So when you're conducting those interviews, have that standard list of questions and get your whole team involved in creating those, because you'll be surprised. It's not that hard once you sit down and actually make the time to do it, but it's the making the time part. So once you conduct the interviews, you get to pick a winner. Dan, talk about this.
Yeah, it's always interesting, and I will say that one of the reasons that we've been successful in hiring young people is that, you know, me, the old guy, is not doing the interviews. We have a young person doing the interviews of young people, and that has been a tremendous help. And Devin does have a lengthy list of questions that she uses, and it's an ever-evolving process. But there are certain three basic things that we're looking for that must be there if we're going to bring someone on board. First of all, they have to have basic office skill sets. We don't want to teach people how to use a computer. We don't want to teach them how to use Word or Excel. We don't want to have to teach them how to use a phone or any of the other technology that we have. We can teach them how to use the specific software that we use, but they need to be able to get in and navigate all that sort of thing themselves. The second thing is they have to have a positive attitude. I mean, we absolutely hire for attitude. You know, a sour attitude can infect an office or a company terribly, and one of the things that we found when we did our individual interviews of everyone is that we identified several people who just simply weren't happy, and they needed to go find some place where they're going to be happy. And with the exception of one, they all realized that process and moved on their own. So that was very helpful. And the third thing is that they have to have buy-in into our culture. We've got to make sure that they understand our culture, which is why we go through the process that we do, and they have to buy into it. And two of those three attributes aren't enough. We have to see all three, because we've had circumstances with three individuals who each had two of those skills but lacked the third, and the one they lacked was one of all, was each of these, and they didn't work. So it's something that we work very hard to find and go through that process, and we take our time to find the right people. We had a position in one of our offices that we needed the right person in there. It took us nearly a year to find the right person, but the team there knew that we're going to find the right person, because when you find the right person, it lifts everyone up and everyone is more productive. So that's kind of where we've gone with it, and we've seen the greatest success. We rarely find people with experience, but we find the right people that we can teach title to, and if they've got those three attributes, we've had some wonderful success.
I think it's really important what you just said, Dan, with regard to that culture piece, because again, you're building a culture, whether it's on purpose or not, and you can teach them title, and I think, again, we've kind of got to think about that as an industry, because we tend to go for our own, right? We want to hire our own, but we are an aging workforce. We need to start looking outside. So I think when you're choosing a winner, it's looking for that organizational fit, but looking for those core values and making sure that they're hungry and they want to build what we're working on building. And the other thing to think about with millennials is they may not be there for the next 30 years. In fact, they probably won't. If you look at some of the statistics, they're going to have 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 jobs, and that's the new norm. So that also dictates for us as an industry, we have to get really good at recruiting, because we're going to have turnover simply because 50% of our workforce is expecting that. They're going to keep moving forward. They're going to keep moving on. So it's no longer hire somebody, keep them for 25 years, and then they move on to retirement. We're going to have a bit of a revolving door to a degree, simply based on the statistics of millennials. Now, I don't say that to scare everybody on the phone, but this recruiting skill set is one I really want our industry and us to feel comfortable with and start honing. So you've got that bench team. So when those millennials say, hey, I've worked here for 4 years, but I'm going to go back to grad school for 3, we're not terrified. We don't have to do a hurry hire and get somebody in there. So I would just invite everybody to be thinking about that. So once we have chosen our winner, A couple other things to think about with regard to competing against some of these other companies. You know, the flex schedule is something I mentioned. We are sort of a 9 to 5, if you think about it, but we're a 9 to 7. Sometimes we're a 6 to 4. But think about flex schedules and what availability do you have. We have a current client right now that has some part-timers where they've got folks that come in from 7 to 2, and then they have someone else that does that exact same job that comes in from noon to 6. So there's that opportunity where you can think about those flex schedules and what that might look like. But the job description is even more important when you have some kind of a flex schedule, because otherwise it gets very muddy in what each person's doing, and you have to have a really good process in place. So that's something you can think about. Day one, they're looking for the healthcare, the education, the reimbursement, like making sure all that stuff is set out so they know exactly what is to be expected of them. And if you also look at the statistics and the data with regard to hiring and new employees, they're going to decide whether they're staying or going in their first 90 days. So for us as the employer, we need to look at that and go, okay, their first 90 days needs to be really, really awesome. So how are you celebrating their joining your family? How are you celebrating that? And how are you making it easy for them to succeed in their first few months on the job? One of the other things we end up building with a lot of our clients is a ramp-up plan for new hires. Now, we don't do this on the processing side, it's mostly for sales, but we have to build some kind of a ramp-up plan so these people feel successful early on. So that's something to think about as well. And then, you know, recognition programs, mentoring programs, you know, more decision-making, get them as close to the customer as possible. Like, give them some things they can do where they can feel very successful. Because remember, we're competing against the Googles. We're competing against the companies that they see on social media all day, every day, that have robots in the parking lot, and they have pool tables and free snacks and on-site childcare. That's what we're up against as an industry. And again, I don't say this to scare you, and Dan and I have talked about this. This is what we need to be aware of as an industry so that we can continue to evolve and let people know how awesome it is to be here and how awesome it is to work here, and invite them to be a part of our title industry family. So Dan, you have a lesson for everyone.
I do, on the next slide. This is something that we've adopted. This is actually a book written by a gentleman by the name of John Maxwell, but we've adopted this. Sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. When you have successes, you have to break it down to determine why was it a success. When you have failures, you need to find out why it was a failure, and you need to apply that. So our process that we've been doing has been a continually evolving process. It's a continual process of refinement. And as we go forward, every time we do have a situation where we didn't have success, what we've learned from that experience, which is one of the ways we came up with those 3 attributes that we absolutely require. So it's something, you know, this is you know, there's no real finish line to this. It's just a continual process of evolving and making it better as you go forward. And honestly, if you look at it very objectively, and certainly one of the things that we had to do was we had to look at ourselves very objectively and figure out where we were just not doing the job well with our people. And we had to make some changes. There were a lot of changes that I had to make. And you have to embrace that. You have to learn from it. And as a result, we do, as I say, we've had some great success with people that we've brought on board. We have a much better team. Honestly, we have the best team I think we've ever had in the 35 years I've been with the company. So it's had a positive effect, and everybody is more productive. Everybody's happy in their job. It's just working well for us. So I can't find fault in it.
Awesome. So, Jeremy, shall we open it up to more questions on the process? I mean, we've kind of gone through a lot today where we started with, you know, knowing a little bit about millennials. Then we've got to kind of do that SWOT analysis of our team, know what you're doing to build your bench team. You're doing it on purpose, so you cast that net. Then you start conducting those interviews with really strong behavioral questions, some kind of a scorecard, making sure you're hiring on skill as well as personality, not just personality, and then keeping that culture going when you're choosing them and bringing them on board. So I think I want to open it up and see if we've got any other questions from our participants.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia and Dan. Yeah, we did address some, but many more questions have been coming in. Dan, a few for you. I mean, obviously you're running the title company, so people are really interested in how you have kind of modified your hiring practices. Sue wanted to know, how long did it take you to get to get to this new process and feel comfortable with it?
We started, it was going on 3 years ago that we started the process of doing the individual interviews, and it took a few months to get through that process. From that, we then began developing the IDP process. So I mean, honestly, it's been to begin to see the successes of what we've of the process. It was about a 2-year process. And now that, and again, as I mentioned, we keep refining it and making it better as we go. So we're seeing a higher percentage of success with people that we bring on board, but it doesn't go quickly. It takes time.
Yeah. You said it, no finish line. You're going to probably keep learning from, some things you've implemented and keep modifying.
Exactly.
Question following up on, you'd mentioned hires, and I think it was, you maybe said 8 or 9. How many of them had prior title experience, and if they didn't, how did you train them? Did you have them that you guys used?
Actually, none of them had prior title experience, and we have a process. One of the things that we've done is and this is part of the mentoring and involving the team, is we've identified people who are very good. For example, we have a young lady that works for us who is just an outstanding administrative assistant, and oftentimes we get very busy and we think, boy, we need somebody else to search and exam, or we need another closer. But if you have a truly exceptional support person for the others in the office that do those functions, the others can be far more productive. So we identify people internally. We certainly take advantage of seminars and training classes, that sort of thing, that are available to us through the state association, through ALTA, through our underwriters, that sort of thing. But the bulk of our training is done internally, and we have people who handle certain topics of training. I teach legal descriptions, for example, so I've gone around to all the offices and done training for legal descriptions, so people understand that and they know they can come to me for that. So it involves the whole team, if you will. Everybody has their strengths, so we like to utilize their strengths, and that gets them to be more active in the whole process and feel that they're a greater part of the process, which we've found success with as well.
All right, very good. And this one again for you, and this is more about the culture and once you have people on board. And the question was actually asked about millennials, but I think it could be just staff in general. And how do you address cell phone usage? We all have our smartphones, in our hands. And so I don't think it's necessarily just the millennials who use the phone. I mean, you can probably go to any staff meeting and everyone's going to have their phone laying there on the desk. So have you guys done any procedures to address that?
Yeah, obviously there's also, the compliance side of things and best practices and all that. So we do have a process by which we don't tell people they can't use them, because obviously we've got a lot of people with children in school and that sort of thing, so they've got to have that level of communication. But the cell phone has to either be in a pocket, a purse, or the desk. And if they do get a call, we have what we've kind of designated as safe zones in the office, if you will. They're away from all the computers, that sort of thing, and away from where the production is at, and they can take their call in a safe zone. The other thing that we've done too is that we actually have a public access computer in the offices, so that they can do, if they want to go to Amazon and do Christmas shopping, they're welcome to do that, so that they're not doing that on their work computer. And because that's, we've got to be cautious about viruses and all those types of things, and things that get downloaded that create, grief for all of us. So we realized we couldn't say no. We have to provide people with a method by which they can utilize these things, but we also have to look at the compliance side of things as well. So we've come up with, I think, a solution that everybody seems to be pretty happy with, and it seems to work fine.
All right, very good. We'll give you a quick break here. And Cynthia, a question for you when you were talking about behavioral interviewing. And the question is if if people should consider personality testing, like a Myers-Briggs.
Yes. We actually use one when we're interviewing on behalf of a client. It's called the Simmons test. It is my personal favorite, simply because I think it's a better predictor of future behavior. But you can use this, you can use Myers-Briggs, you can use CalPERS, you can use Simmons. I mean, there's literally dozens of them out there. What I would caution you on with regard to one of those profiles is it's just that. It's a profile. So you make sure whoever is interpreting it for you is skilled in that. So you can't just send them to do a DISC profile online and then you go, oh, okay, they're a high D, they're, high I, whatever. It's somebody needs to actually read through it and then tell you how that person is probably going to behave in your organization. And the other thing that I encourage folks to do is use that as part of your ramp up for that individual. If that's a hire and they're a high D, what kind of personality they're going to have. They're going to be directed. They're going to need certain things to feel successful. So I like those. Again, it's making sure that you are using the information and you can interpret it well, though, because I see a lot of people throw them through a personality profile just as sort of a check the box. But it really is building that job profile. And you'll also find if you have someone who is skilled in reading those, they can help you build the job profile based on that personality. So we know, especially for sales, what a sales profile looks like, and we can tell you that when we review it. You'll get to know that as well. So look at, your best escrow officer. What are his or her traits? That's something you can start to build from. So it can be very helpful. And
the test you recommended was Simmons?
Simmons, yeah, Simmons, and it's my personal favorite. I get nothing. I don't own the company or something. It's just the one that I think is the best one because out of all the tests I've ever taken as a behaviorist and everything else, it's the one I took and I went, okay, who's following me? How do they know this? So for me, I think it's the best predictor of behavior.
All right. Well, we're about at the top of the hour. One more question, Cynthia, for you. Any suggestions on a good place to find interview questions that are behavioral based?
Oh boy. Okay. So Google is your first friend in that, and there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sites that have them. What I would encourage you to do, though, is go to Google, look at them, and start pulling categories of questions, which this is something the Education Committee is working on for you all. Again, I don't know that we'll get it out this year, but it is something we're working on. But start to build categories. So ask, questions within the leadership category. Ask questions within time management. Ask questions within sales. Ask questions within process. So create those lists of questions, and then whoever's interviewing on your team can start to pull from those as well. But you will be surprised how many resources are out there that have, it's free. It's on the internet. So I would start there, but really start to craft that profile for your own organization.
All right. Thank you, Cynthia. We did have a few questions. People mentioned they went to the Alta website and couldn't view the sample job descriptions. You do have to be logged in. It is an ALTA membership benefit. Your membership does need to be active, and it needs to be an ALTA membership, not a Policy Forms license. If you're still having issues, give us a call. We'll help get that sorted out. So with that, we'll wrap up today's discussion. As a reminder, if you missed part of today's webinar, or if you think others in your office would benefit from listening, a recording of the presentation will be available for replay next week on Alta's website, alta.org/title topics. If we didn't get to your question, the contact information is included in the PowerPoint, and it's on the screen right there. Looking ahead to April, our next webinar will focus on technology trends and tools that title professionals may want to consider to help improve efficiency from pre to post closing. And with that will bring us to the conclusion of today's presentation. Cynthia and Dan, thank you again for providing some great ideas on how to build a workforce for the next generation. And I'd also like to thank Fidelity once again for sponsoring today's webinar. I hope all the listeners found the presentation useful, and take care, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.